There's a lurking danger there too. So um, the rising attractiveness of figures like Andrew Tate speaks to the danger of demoralizing young men. Because if you demoralize young men, you make, what would you say, charismatic bad men become much more attractive. Because they're the men who say, well, to hell with all of this idiot constraint and pathetic morality, I'm just going to go and do whatever the hell I want. This is a kind of a narcissistic route to self-aggrandizement and attainment, right? But if the alternative to that is to lay, half comatose in your basement, being depressed about the impending apocalypse, a little bit of attractive criminality beckons as quite the compelling alternative. And that can easily make itself manifest on the political front. If you raise a generation of demoralized men and then you wave a leader in front of them who says some forthright, self-aggrandizing, semi-criminal behavior would be in your best interest, the probability that they're going to find that attractive, that kind of, that's a good route to a kind of fascist populism, let's say. The probability that people are going to find that attractive is extremely high. I mean, I think that part of the reason that Trump was attractive, and I am not going to, grind away negatively and simple-mindedly on Trump because he's a complicated character. But part of the reason that Trump was attractive was because he had that, up yours attitude, that giant middle finger attitude towards the woke mob that was a hell of a lot more attractive than the half-baked, cowardly kowtowing that the typical conservatives do when faced with a woke onslaught. And, Trump at least had the gall to tell people to go to hell when it was necessary. And maybe he did that more often than he should have. I mean, he's not the world's... He's definitely a bull in a china shop, but, maybe it's better to have a bloody bull in the china shop than a castrated gelding. I mean, it's pretty damn perverse to turn children into activists, but it's more perverse to do this, and this is what's been happening particularly with young men, and I've seen thousands of examples of this. In fact, I had a friend who eventually committed suicide. He was an early victim of exactly this sort of thinking, I would say. He committed suicide it's got to be 15 years ago after living a pretty damn dismal life, and he was racked with existential guilt as a consequence of his intolerable masculinity. And so that didn't work out very well for him as let's call it a life plan. And so here's what I see happening in the schools with young men in particular. And I think it's worth concentrating on them because boys are not doing well in school. Teenage boys are not doing well in junior high. Men are not going to university, and if they do, they don't graduate. An increasing number of men aren't picking up, let's say, gainful employment or mature relationships when they hit adulthood, and more men are bailing out of the entire sexual dynamic process as well. Not only not having relationships with women, but not having sex at all, not even with themselves. And that's becoming more and more widespread. It's part of the broad-scale demoralization of men and boys. And so how does that start? Well, it starts in school, and the reason it starts in school is because the more boisterous boys, so more extroverted and less agreeable, so actually more hard to discipline and control, they don't want to sit still for 6 hours a day and shut up and not say anything. They want to run around and play, and they want to do it competitively. And that is like verboten in school. If you're the sort of boy who wants that, you're nothing but trouble. And so right at the beginning, the boys are taught that their deepest intrinsic desire for, let's say, active exploration and engagement, certain degree of competitive dominance, that's bad. That's morally bad. And so that's brutal, especially when it's medicated out of them, which is exactly what happens on the attention deficit disorder front, let's say, because Ritalin suppresses play. That's what it does pharmacologically. It doesn't calm kids down. That's complete bloody rubbish, and it certainly doesn't calm hyperactive kids down differentially. None of that's the least bit true, but those medications are widely used. And so boys are demoralized right at the beginning in school because their natural proclivity for boisterous activity is deemed inappropriate. And then there's explicit training. That happens next. And the explicit training is a bloody leftist claim that, history is to be read as nothing but a patriarchal nightmare. The inference being that all of the competitive striving that characterizes masculinity is nothing but the force that manifests itself as patriarchal domination and tyranny. And so any boy that has any degree of compassion, let's say, and who might feel guilty for his toxic masculinity is going to be demoralized by the suggestion that his ambition is nothing but the manifestation of implicit tyrannical force. And if he escapes that, well, then the leftists are there to mop up whatever, bit of courage might be left by accusing him of being part of the force that's eternally raping the planet. And so you see, and I've seen thousands of cases of this, it's been devastating to me to see how widespread this is. The degree of demoralization that characterizes young men it's almost incomprehensible. It's incomprehensibly deep, and it's hurting people in a very deep way. And it's not just hurting boys and men, obviously, because if women are then faced with an entire cohort of demoralized men, it's like, well, what the hell are they going to do for a partner? There's lots of universities now where it's 2-to-1 women to men. Well, that's no damn good for the women. How are they going to find a partner?
Right. And the idea, women say there are no good men. Well, yeah, this is what happened. They destroyed boys, they destroyed men, and then obviously women are unable to find somebody because the pool has gotten like this. I have a daughter and 2 sons. I absolutely think that there's a difference between the 2 sexes. They're born different. It's not just something that they grow into. Day one, they were different. And the idea that they're the same and that we should treat them the same and that we should give preference to girls, I think that that's a real problem. I don't know that we've gotten to a point where we can treat them equally. That would be, obviously the goal. But, in the meantime, I think we need to do more for boys. I think we're really raising a lost generation of boys. And it's scary to me that it's so easily dismissed because, who cares about boys? They've done well enough in history that we don't need to worry about this group of boys now. I definitely worry about my sons more than I worry about my daughter.
Well, there's a lurking danger there too. So the rising attractiveness of figures like Andrew Tate speaks to the danger of demoralizing young men, because if you demoralize young men, you make, what would you say, charismatic bad men become much more attractive. Because they're the men who say, well, to hell with all of this idiot constraint and pathetic morality, I'm just going to go and do whatever the hell I want. This is a kind of a narcissistic route to self-aggrandizement and attainment, right? But if the alternative to that is to lay, half comatose in your basement, being depressed about the impending apocalypse, a little bit of attractive criminality beckons as quite the compelling alternative.